Good day, everyone. New episode of the IBM's Data Resilience Spectrum Cast. Welcome, everyone. Today, as you can see, we're minus one of our illustrious subject matter experts, Sean Sperry. Sean's actually doing some education for some of our sellers over in Egypt. He's not there. He's doing it virtually. But today, we're going to talk about the fact that this week, IBM launched the Spectrum Protect Plus solution in the Azure marketplace. So if you want to protect applications, born in the cloud applications such as Microsoft 365, or if you want to utilize Azure as a repository for the vSnap server for whether it be just backup or long-term retention, you have the ability to do that. And Tricia created a wonderful demonstration of this on her YouTube channel.
Yeah, I think what's great about this type of deployment, and we don't just have it on Azure, we have it also on AWS, and we have it on IBM Cloud, is that this is really making it simple to deploy automatically these, either a complete Spectrum Protect Plus server in vSnap, so a complete solution into the cloud, or deploying a hybrid solution. If you already have your Spectrum Protect Plus server in your IT center, you can easily deploy a vSnap just to protect those local workloads and to act as a replication target for your on-site stuff. So I think it's really powerful that we can now look at how simple it is to deploy these solutions. And that's powerful and for people who may not want to spend a lot of time setting it up.
It's cool to see that we don't just talk a good game as it relates to hybrid multi-cloud, but we genuinely kind of deliver it, which is refreshing. So it's nice to see us moving beyond the hype phase and into the real implementation phase. It's cool.
I think what's interesting is in our cloud Spectrum cast that we delivered a few weeks ago, we put up this particular slide. And here we talk about all of the different places where IBM has a solution in the cloud and also where we deliver in the marketplace. And I actually think, Randy, to your point, it's pretty extensive. It's bringing up the next level of conversation. How do people think about data protection? Thinking about it as a service, whether it's backup as a service or backup as a managed service or backup in the cloud, and it can be delivered in the cloud as a service. It's like this, we're hearing more and more of this every client that we go in and we talk to. And I think that says something about how the data protection industry is evolving. Wouldn't you say, Randy?
Yeah, so definitely, and again, you guys, as I say every week, it's kind of people are sick of hearing me say it, but you guys are really the domain experts here. I'm kind of an interloper, but I do see this shift, and every time I talk to clients about their broader strategy for moving, beyond their data center based workloads into a true hybrid multi-cloud, as we talked about a minute ago, data protection is always a key element of that. And as they're looking to implement multi-cloud and working with multiple cloud providers, either again as managed services or as, they're just consumers of data protection as a service, they're all saying it. Everybody's doing it. Everybody's talking about doing it. So it's a huge, segment of the market. And there's lots of studies out there. This is just one of them, but, showing that the size of the market opportunity is really growing. It's not limited to any one particular geography or workload environment or use case or vertical industry segment. It kind of spans everything, and it's creating a lot of opportunities for vendors like IBM and others, of course. But it's a huge opportunity. The news of our support now for Microsoft Azure just kind of references that or reinforces that, I guess. So yeah, this is definitely an important market segment that we're going to continue to see growing very rapidly. And again, I think we're pretty well positioned working in conjunction with Red Hat to really exploit some of these opportunities.
Well, what is the difference between data protection as a service versus data protection as a managed service?
So, and again, my impression and what I gather from speaking to clients and analysts is that the managed service and actually the partners that we work with offer these managed services where it's literally kind of hands off. You configure it, You decide what workloads are going to be covered within your, policy portfolio, and they handle everything. They handle the backup, they handle the journaling, all of the generational retention policies. And in the event that you have any kind of a recovery requirement, they also facilitate that. So they'll get you point in time recovery. They'll help orchestrate the process. They'll kind of handle everything start to finish. Whereas if you're more independent, then you're just leveraging that platform as a target, really as a backup and recovery target. I mean, I think that's what it means. That's my perception of it anyway.
Well, when I look at our Azure offering, our AWS or IBM Cloud offering, when I see that data protection as a service, it deploys, it being the cloud provider, deploys the vSnap server or the Spectrum Protect Plus server and sets it up, but then it hands it over to the individual administrator for that, who owns that data, to do the setting up of the backup schedules to make sure it's actually running correctly and to do restores, as well as to update the Spectrum Protect Plus software as new updates become available.
Yeah.
I think that's a good distinction, Tricia, and I think that hits the nail on the head, right? If you want to have more control, I should say more control. If you want to have more control administering the solution, then you do backup as a service. But if you want it fully managed, you don't want to have to deal with it. You let someone else, and basically you just say, hey, look, these are my service level agreements that I need to be able to meet. Partner, please deliver these to me, right? And I kind of don't care.
Yeah, and I think it also just reinforces this whole shift toward true born in the cloud, cloud native development and kind of DevOpsy workflows and delivery of service, because now practitioners and business people don't want to worry about the nerdy, IT infrastructure stuff. They would much prefer to consume it as a packaged service. It's easy. They don't have to worry about the details. They can be confident, hopefully, unlike Parler and others that we've talked about before, they can be confident that in the event something goes wrong, they won't have to invest, 1 million man hours or person hours to recover and get things back to normal. They can, build on or rely on the expertise of the platform provider.
I think the main point we want to be able to point out here is the fact that now IBM provides data protection as a service, if that's what you're looking for, in Azure, in AWS, and in the IBM Cloud. So if you're thinking, how do I continue to build out my data protection environment, and I've been told, or I want to leverage the cloud, now you've got 3 great ways to be able to, or 3 great implementation locations where you can actually do that, that can support whatever business need you have with whatever major relationships, whether it's AWS, Microsoft, or IBM, that you have.
Well, and this is also, and we've talked about this in previous sessions, this is also something that is becoming increasingly prominent and much more significant in the era of virtual workspaces, right? So we've all been, as we've talked about a bunch of times, forced into this environment now where suddenly everybody's working remotely, and it creates a whole new set of challenges around data management and sovereignty and protection and reliability. And that's putting a lot of pressure on organizations to better manage, not just the data that sits in the data center or the data that sits within their cloud providers, but protecting their infrastructure from potential insider threats, whether it be, data restrictions. There's examples where, again, you've got a much larger population of remote users now who are probably using some of their own technology and intermingling it with their, corporate assets that they've been given by the company they work for, by their employer. It creates a different set of policy requirements and a whole different set of security restrictions and limitations. So again, it's yet another thing that when the pandemic happened and that kind of switch was thrown, it put a whole different type of pressure on IT organizations to really be able to deal with things like this. And it's creating real challenges. And in fact, Trish, you pointed out kind of an interesting situation in the news just within the last couple of days where this insider threat became a little more prominent.
Yeah, so it was a story that actually happened about a year ago where a vendor for concessions at our local soccer team, the San Jose Earthquakes, he'd been fired a couple months previously and probably was disgruntled. Mm-hmm. And he went in and deleted on opening day all of the menus, prices, and order taking tools in this concession application. And so basically that day, the vendors had to give away the food and lots of chaos. So even though it's kind of a small piece, there's only about $250,000 being spoken about, it really emphasizes, did this employee still have access to that system? Was it ever taken away? Did they have some type of Active Directory in working that once an employee was fired, that their passwords were deleted? Or was it a true hack? Hard to say, but either way, the consequences are the same there.
Cool if you're a fan, though. It definitely has kind of a Guy Fawkes element to it. I'd be pretty psyched if I was there and everything was free. But
I think it's great. It bounces off of what we were talking about last week, Randy, with your in the news around data loss prevention. And in that list that you had brought up before, right, it talked about, and Tricia, I like the fact that you point out the fact that there are some people that are in your environment that shouldn't be there. And that's the whole, how do I keep the bad actors out? There are some people who probably work for you, used to work for you, who have access or knowledge of the systems, who get in and they're disgruntled and they want to do something. In either case, you don't want them in there, right? So there are a whole litany of things that you need to be able to do in the event that a whole list of things happen. Does the bad actor get in? Is it a malware hack? Or does someone get fired from a company? And all of these have to do with data loss prevention and making sure that your site and your environment is secure. And I think we've done a good job at kind of highlighting, you got to protect against all of these threats, right? And it is a threat.
Yeah, well, sorry, Tricia, just quickly, that it plugs right into the whole overarching data protection strategy. So regardless of what the threat vector is or what event causes the loss or compromise of data, the recovery process is fundamentally the same, right?
But that baits the question of, what if this disgruntled employee had gone in and hacked your data backup system? What if he had been a backup administrator and gone in and deleted your backups as well? And so that becomes a real big issue where you're losing your second line of defense. And so like when you look at Spectrum Protect, obviously we can work with Active Directory. We can do things like double authentication on commands that are administrative commands that are destructive to Spectrum Protect data. But you got to implement these. If you don't implement them and you leave your default password as password, what good does it do?
Yeah.
We're seeing more and more and more conversations. At least I have seen a massive ramp just in the last 4 weeks around security and protection of my information, the resilience of my data. Forget the resilience of my application or whatever, the resilience of my data, the ability to recover that information, regardless of how it was corrupted, whether it be a fat finger, whether it be a mistake, whether it be a malicious intent, whether it be ransomware. Just how do I feel about bringing that data back? We're now slowly seeing what used to be disaster recovery. Disaster recovery is everything these days. If I lose data, it's a disaster because data has become so important in my environment and how I run my business that I need to be able to recover that. And my service level agreements, my recovery time objectives are getting to as near zero as possible. I think the big challenge, and we've talked about this, is the balance between everything is an it depends, right? I want it yesterday. That's going to cost you $1 billion. Okay, well, it's somewhere in the middle is where I need to be. Now, how do I architect smartly for architecting for recovery, not architecting for backup?
Yeah. Yeah. The backup is, the insurance is cheap. The filing the claim is expensive, right? So how do you resolve or how do you mitigate that risk? And again, these things all tie together. The new threat vectors that result from this massively distributed workforce are putting huge pressure again on every part of the IT infrastructure stack and specifically in the data protection and recovery area, obviously, because that's where the biggest vulnerabilities are. So I think it's been interesting to watch, and we talked a little bit about this last week under the banner of data loss prevention. It's interesting to see how the industry has responded to these new classes of threats and this new volume of threat as a result of the virtual workspaces. It's been kind of cool to see how quickly vendors and organizations, consultancies, best practices have evolved to handle these new threats. So it's another example of kind of necessity being the mother of invention. It's creating these opportunities. Vendors are stepping in to fill these voids and gaps in functionality, and that results in a more robust solution stack, which is good for bad reasons, but good thing for bad reasons, I guess.
Well, even in the cloud offerings, you see the cloud providers having these very secure bastion servers protecting, like the Spectrum Protect Plus server, so not everybody can enter, or VPN setup, and you having to go through those. And I think that is just another step of what you're speaking about, Randy.
And one of the things I think is important to call out here is the whole reason why we did the whole in the news is because data has become so important that we wanted to call out things that we saw around data that would allow you, the end user, to think about weirdo new ways that folks are getting in to infiltrate your environment. And are you really protected against that? Mm-hmm. And so just ask yourself, right? I mean, you can look through any news article on any particular day, any newspaper on any particular day and see, oh, something happened with someone's data causing a major problem. How do I feel? Am I capable to recover from that? Am I resilient against that?
Yeah. And it's interesting, if you strip away all the ancillary stuff and all the details, it really does come down to a very simple question of, can you recover? So forget about the sophistication of the threat or how it's evolving or how you'll never be able to stay one step ahead of the bad actors. You won't. So it's inevitable that there will be some kind of a vulnerability or a threat incident. Can you recover from it? And that really basic question boils down to your ground level data protection policies. The rest is all window dressing, arguably, right? So we talk a lot about the kind of how the threats arrive and what shape and form they take. But at the end of the day, regardless of what the threat looks like or how it evolves and adapts, the bottom line is, can you or can you not recover?
Try starting with, it's gone.
Yeah.
How do I get it back? I don't care how it's gone.
I don't care how it got gone. I just need to get it back. Yeah.
And Tricia, what's the best thing you can do about getting your data back and making sure you can do it time and time again?
Test.
Perfect. That's what I wanted to hear.
Yes, we got to keep beating that drum. By the way, I'm still holding out for the Tricia's Tools segment. I'm hoping that's coming soon.
Yes.
Maybe next week. A tool suggestion.
Okay. Oh, go ahead. Let's do it. Let's start this week.
So when we talk about tools, a lot of times we're thinking of things that are blatantly applications or things, but in our development group, we spend a lot of time talking about the scores and the feedback we get from customer surveys. And you all would be surprised as end users how much emphasis is put on, are you satisfied with our product? Would you recommend our product to other people? What issues have you hit? So my tool tip for the day is take those surveys and express your opinion, express your frustrations, express your pleasures, and let us know how we can make the product better, because we are listening.
That's a good one.
I do think the world sometimes feels like they're being NPS'd to death. However, inside of IBM, it's taken, as you said, extremely seriously. Yeah. And on every call I'm on, a weekly, in our offerings call, the product offerings call, we talk about what's been happening, what's new, how's it growing, is it getting better, are we doing the right things? So you're right, Tricia, we are paying attention and we listen.
Yeah, that's a great point. And especially with NPS, I mean, it literally takes like 2 seconds. So yes, you get 1 million of them a day, but know that it does actually make a difference and your voice is actually being heard. It's a really good point.
Great. All right, team, I want to thank you all very, very much. A relatively short Spectrum Cast today, but I think it was some good content. And I'd like to say thank you, Tricia, for being here. Randy, thanks again. And
no problem. And one demerit for Sean, who missed it.
One demerit for Sean. And we'll see you all next week.
Might be at Disneyland. We don't know.
It might be at Disneyland on the wild ride.
I would not be shocked if that was the case. Thanks, everybody.